faculty, for those who see me for the first time. I'm a lecturer in the economics department, and I'll be lecturing this in this module this semester. For the econometrics, or what I'm planning to do today, I'm going to give you some kind of overview of this module, what we are planning to do, and how we are going to run the sessions, what is expected from you, etc. But I always think when I teach econometrics, I always think that it's very important to ask ourselves, why do we really do econometrics? Is it just for the sake of having fancy equations and fancy models and some estimations, things to talk about, to make our work as economists or researchers looks a bit complicated or some kind of showing off with what we know? It's not like that. So you always need to think about the idea of what you are doing, and sometimes, as you will see in this module with econometrics, you will see that there's a space, or there's room for you, for your own judgment, to which method you use, what fits your data, what is more appropriate to the research question, etc. So there will be some sort of personal judgment at some point, okay? And in many instances, you'll see this very clearly. If I would like to summarize the idea of the whole module, or my approach to teach econometrics in one sentence, is going to be, this sentence would be, is always why we do econometrics. So the idea is, maybe in your undergrad, some of you have done econometrics, some may have not done econometrics before. Don't worry, you'll know all about it this semester. But in general, even those who did econometrics in their undergrad, so they usually do the technical stuff. They think of econometrics as, okay, we press some buttons, we get some results, and we interpret the results. Hey, we pass. That's what we do. But in this module, I will always ask you to be critical about what you learn. Think about why you do it. You will be asked to read research papers, comment on those research papers. This is your exam, by the way, and that's exactly what you see in the exam. So what we will be doing in the class here, that's what we'll see in the exam. And that's the philosophy of the whole module, okay? Is to be very critical about methods, different techniques. You need to be aware, not just why using a certain method. You need to be also aware of the limitations of these methods, okay? And that's what you need to demonstrate, okay? As part of your assessment, that's what is expected from you. Not just to be able to do it, you need to be able to do it and say and explain why you choose that method and what are the limitations, because there's nothing called perfect model. Always there will be always limitation, there'll be always problems, there'll be always issues. We live in the real world is different from textbook examples. Okay. I believe that one of the first or the most important step, or the main point that I want to highlight today, is the philosophy of this, what we're trying to do here, what we're trying to achieve, and what we want to achieve by the end of this course. That's why I always start with economic research and the idea of economic research and why we do economic research. Before I jump into that, here you can find me or anywhere online, so Facebook, Hanomics, my website, my webpage, Hanomics on YouTube, Hanomics on Twitter. So just search for Hanomics, you'll find me. This hashtag, I used it in last year with this class to share with you research that applies methods we learn about in this lecture, in this semester. So it's very, very important as well to follow this hashtag on Twitter. And whenever I post something, I will let you know. I'll email you. But feel free to follow me uh, wherever you want. Facebook, YouTube, um, Twitter, whatever. Anyway, so let's now come back to the point. Why do we do economic research? Why do we need to do research? Why we keen? As I said, it's not just because you want to show fancy stuff and nice stuff and publish, etc. There is a question we want to answer. Okay, so in your coursework, in your dissertation, maybe when you go to work after this, if you want to write a report, if you want to do any piece of research, whatever the context is, you will be always looking for answers, and that's what we do. Okay, so we're trying to find answers and to convince people that this is a good answer. We can't just tell them the answer. We need to explain how did we come to that answer. Okay, so you need to describe, not just telling, you need to describe how did you come to this conclusion. Okay, so to write a research paper, you can write a theoretical research paper where you just have you study the incentives or constraints of that face your economic agents. When I talk about agents, it could be a firm, it could be individuals, household, countries, etc. So your subject. And based on that, you can expect their behavior in certain situation. So in economics, it's the most basic thing we do. Or like when you start economics, you start talking about when prices increases, quantity demand decrease. So kind of like theoretically or economic theory tell us that, but then we need to test that. So we need to use data. So we write empirical work. So theoretical work based on some assumptions about agents, restrictions or incentives they have, and then you predict some outcome. But with the empirical research, you could have observational. Most of the work we'll be doing will be based on observational data, so you have no intervention as a researcher. So you want to see what happened to the exchange rate in the UK based on after Brexit, so you just collect data about exchange rate after that period. Okay, as a researcher, you have no intervention. You haven't changed anything in the exchange rate. You didn't have. You've done nothing to the exchange rate. You actually just observing or collecting observational data. So there's no intervention. There is another side of this research or empirical research that you can actually do some experiment, which is actually fun as well. So as a researcher, you will have like two groups. One group, you could have some sort of treatment and you want to evaluate the effect of this treatment on the treated group, and then you compare. So you've done something. So you have like a group that you expose to some sort of intervention, and then you have another group that is not, and then you try to compare between both. And again, this is another area of empirical research. So in all cases, what we're going to be focusing on mainly in this course is empirical research. So we're not going to talk about theoretical research, but theory is always important. As you'll see in this course, later in this lecture, and the whole course, everything starts from theory. Okay? So if you have a question that you want to find answer, you need first to start from theory. You need to start first. You must have some theory that explain how the variables involved interact with each other. So the first step to write an empirical paper, you need a question, but then you need to think of the theoretical background. What economic theory tell us? So if you want to have a model, to estimate a model based on which you can come to a conclusion related to how households would react to price change or income change or whatever. So you need first to start from theory. What does economic theory tell us about that? About the behavior of households when income change. So it's always important. I know you expect me to jump to, okay, this is the data, here's how we do this, what we do, but you still need to think about the why we do that. So the most important part in this course is not just how, is why. Okay? So let's agree from day one, whatever you do in this module, not just think of how to do it, think of also of why you're doing it. Okay? So it's very important. So when you do, even in your coursework, your dissertation, the same way you can apply this to any empirical piece you're working on. So first you start with the research question, then you need to think about how the variables, the main variables involved here, interact, how you expect them to interact, or what economic theory or what theory tell us about these variables. Okay, so this is very, very important. Then you need to look at published research, because published research give you an idea about what has been done. Okay, so there is no point if you're going to do exactly something that has been done before, using the same data, using in the same situation, you're just replicating the whole thing, using the same method, so it's not really adding much to our knowledge. So that's why you need to start from where others, what others wrote about this topic. So you need to be familiar with published research. It gives you knowledge about the data and also give you knowledge about empirical techniques. This is one question that I receive nearly every couple of days through these channels, Facebook or Twitter. Like, people contact me from different places, ask me, okay, I'm working on this, what to do? Like, which technique, what method should I use? I say, just go read your literature review. Do your literature review first. You will know what people do, what people use. Okay? So before you ask me, just do some work first. Okay? Do your part first. Okay? Go and see the published research. That will give you an idea about where to get data from. Again, they ask me where get data from. So, sorry, just go and see what others did. Okay? And also you will see the techniques, what sort of techniques they have used. And then you see where econometrics come? It comes last. This is where econometrics come, at the end. Okay? After you've done this. So you've done your part, you have a research question. Remember, there's no point to do research if you don't have a question to answer. So there's a very interesting question, at least to yourself, you find it interesting. You think it is interesting. But also you need to convince others that it is interesting. It's not just because you like it, or it seems funny or nice. So that's why I'm doing it. And here comes the motivation. That's what we call the motivation. That's what we ask people always. Where's your motivation? What is your motivation? Why should I care about your research? Why should I read your work? Okay? So the research question is important to be able to convince others or show others that actually it is something important, it's something interesting, and something that they should care about. Anyway, so the whole point from this introduction is to put econometrics in context. Okay? So don't never do econometrics without thinking about these steps first. Why I'm here? Why am I doing this? I need to think first. What's my research question? What theory tell me about this? So what should I expect? How do these variables interact? Okay? And then what others have done. So read some papers, read some work. And then this will give you ideas about data, the source of data, the techniques, what others have found. And then, okay, I'm going actually to contribute now. I'm going to tell people something they don't know. And that is the contribution. That's why you do this. Okay? So again, it's not, you don't do empirical research because, again, the sake of research, or you want to look. Anyway, so the idea here is just you need to think more in depth about what you're actually doing and why you're doing it. And as I said, the most important message so far is where econometrics lies here. Actually, it comes after all of this. Okay, we focus on econometrics, but from time to time we'll go back to talk about Okay, so what? Let's pretend that this is our research question. Okay, let's say, okay, what theory says about that, and what should we expect, etc. And as I said, in this module, you'll be expected to read research papers. Okay, so I'll be referring to recent research, my lecture notes, and you're expected to read these papers. A few papers. I'm not going to be asking for too much, okay? But at least last year I put like 5-6 papers for the whole semester for people to read and to comment on. So not just to read, to be critical when you read those papers, okay? Because there's a reason why I put these papers there, not just to read them, also to be able to comment on what methods they have used, whether these methods address the research question or not, and so on. So we try to go beyond how to do econometrics to why you do this, okay? So keep this always in your mind. Anyway, so this is about writing empirical research. This is an example of one of my papers, Catching the Mirage, the Shadow Impact of Financial Crisis. Came out 2017, the Quarter Review of Economics and Finance. So our research question, this paper, we ask the question, how do shadow economy, when we talk about the shadow economy, we talk about the undergrad economy or the economic activities that off the record. So it could be anything, could be legal activities or illegal activities. So drug dealing is part of the shadow economy. Again, there's no records, okay? So what we try to say, okay, how does this part of the economy, how does this sector of the economy behave in time of crisis? If we have a financial shock, financial crisis, that's what we were interested in. How does the shadow economy react? Does it expand? So that means more people or people who lose their jobs in the formal sector, they go to work informal or go to work in the shadow economy. So that means the shadow economy, the size of the shadow economy increases. Or the shock affect both the formal economy or the official GDP and the shadow economy as well. So that means it can go either way. So because this is what economic theory tells us. So substitution effect means that those who lose jobs here, they will go and join the shadow economy. In that case, the shadow economy absorbed the shock or help the economy to absorb the shock or mitigate the effect or the negative impact of the shock, because those who lose their jobs in the formal economy, they actually, in the formal sector, they go actually and find some jobs. Not necessarily 100% of those who lose jobs, but at least it helps. On the other side, income effect means like actually both sides of the economy are affected badly by the shock, and it's not going to help. Actually, it will shrink or it will decrease in size. So that was the research question, and that was our expectation. So, or the theoretical expectation of what would we expect in time of crisis. Here comes the challenges, because the shadow economy, we said it's not recorded. So how are we going to measure it? So that's the first challenge. Okay, we'll come back to this later when we talk about one of the lectures. But in general, you need to be aware that this is something very, very difficult to do, and that's why I call it catching the mirage. So something like you don't know where it exists actually. It's like, why are you actually measuring? It's something very, researchers try, they do their best to get something, okay, but it's not necessarily it doesn't necessarily catch the 100% of the these sort of economic activities. But anyway, so just to give you an idea about this, like writing an empirical research or an empirical paper is just like, it's like a journey. You start with a question, You dig a little bit deeper to see what theory tell us about it, and then these sort of issues arise. Measurement, how are we going to measure what is meant to be covered, like to be in the shadow all the time? It's something you're not meant to see anyway. And then let's assume that now we came with a brilliant idea, which you need to convince others that this is a good idea, or a good way of measuring it, which we did in the paper, but we don't believe it's perfect. It's not. We are very clear about that, and that's the point I raised in the beginning. You need to be aware of the limitations of your work. So we are aware that this is not a perfect measure of the shadow economy. We say it in the paper. We're clear about it. Okay? But we claim that it's the best we could do. We tried. That's the best we can do. Okay? But in the same time, I say, from the title of the paper, it's something very difficult to find. It's not like you don't know where it is. Like you can't really. Do you think when you go to a drug dealer, and you're never going to ask for a receipt? Probably will shoot you before you do that. Okay? So my point is okay, just be aware. So you don't have to hide the limitation. Okay? You don't need to bury them. You actually need to show that you're aware of the problems in your estimation. Okay? So whatever model you build, whatever estimation you have, just be explicit. Don't be scared to say, okay, yes, I know there are problems here, and these are the problems. Okay? So that's the idea. So I said, well, the measurement is a very challenging task. And we never claimed, and no one did, not just us, no one did, that they actually find a perfect measure of the shadow economy, something that you're not supposed to see or measure. Okay? But anyway, and then it comes econometrics here, you see. We start talking about econometrics after all these steps, so in that journey. So we were not concerned really about what method to use yet, or what technique to follow yet. We are more concerned about the story of that paper. So where's the question? What do you want to answer? Why is it important to answer that question? And that's exactly what we call the policy implication. Why is it important to know whether the shadow economy expand in size or shrink in times of crisis? Well, because it's a crisis time. Okay? If it does expand and it help or give some chance for the economy to absorb the shock, and that's exactly what we said in the paper, and that's what we found in the paper, by the way. Okay? So maybe some sort of lax enforcement of anti-shadow regulation during bad times might be a good idea. Okay? Let people find jobs even in the shadow or even in the informal sector. Well, okay. Anyway, I'm not trying to sell my paper. I'm not trying to say, okay, I'm saying this is what we said in the paper, okay? So it's a story. It's like a journey you need to go through. And this is how you need to think about your own work.